You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. Today is August 24th. Am I correct? Oh my goodness, is it ever late into the month already? My name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined as always by my co-host Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing this late Tuesday in August?
Spencer, hello. Yes, it's a little disorienting. We're already almost 8 months all the way through 2021. It just keeps going. Apparently, that's how that works. So here we are. I'm doing well. I just want to open the show with a bit of a better ABK update. Unfortunately, the news was a bit quiet this week. A lot of the mainstream press is kind of moving on. No big splashes. We did get some press today from Axios. One of their reporters had obtained an updated copy of the lawsuit, and it's been expanded to include temporary workers, contractors, things of that nature. The language has sort of been changed from employees, implying full-time employees, to anybody who works there. It's been changed to workers. So that's actually a good thing. I think expanding the scope of the lawsuit, assuming that the company stays in business and that everybody doesn't just lose their jobs. I think the more comprehensive the lawsuit is, the better it is for, hopefully improving conditions for workers. We still haven't seen any real acknowledgement of the employees' demands or any tangible action from Activision Blizzard leadership, which is disappointing but not unexpected. Although I did have to laugh this week because Activision did a big presser for their new Call of Duty, whatever they're doing with Call of Duty this year. I don't play Call of Duty, so I can't tell you what it's about, but they had some press event to introduce it, and there was nary an Activision logo to be found on the videos and stuff they were showing of the new Call of Duty. And it's like, everybody knows that Activision makes Call of Duty. And just because you can't get your house in order doesn't mean that, the stench doesn't waft over to all these other products that you're doing. So, hopefully we can keep this stuff in the conversation. I mean, obviously, I think Activision Blizzard seems like they feel like they did enough and the heat's off of them now, and they're just going to lay low and just wait for stuff to get back to normal. And normal is no good. We don't want normal. So hopefully, we start seeing some real changes and more of a conversation about it. But that's about it for this week as far as that stuff goes.
Well, I mean, outside of the stuff that's been going on with Acti Blizz, we have had a past week in World of Warcraft that we can also talk about a little bit. My week was dramatic, to say the least. The short form is I am again without a team. That is the short form of it all. But what it really comes down to, because I do want to discuss this for a little bit at the top of the show, my decision around choosing to leave this team, and we hadn't finished Prague. We were when I left, we were about 60 pulls into Sylvanas Prague, was because the environment there was one that I was no longer enjoying, and I hadn't been enjoying for a while. There was a group, and this often happens in a lot of raid teams. We talked a bit about raid leadership last week when we were answering the question. And there was a group within the team who were very toxic, and they'd been toxic for the majority of the tier. And by majority, I mean like since the first week of Prague, in how they were reacting and how they were acting in the team. And the officers were very focused on just wanting to get through progression. That was sort of their goal, was we don't want to kick anyone off the team or punish anyone or fear of losing people. It didn't help that one of these people who was toxic is a tank on the team, which means if you lose that, then you have to replace a tank on the team. So they were very much just skittish, if you will, when it came to actually addressing any of these issues. And so they just didn't. And over the span of this tier, we've had several people leave the team due to this behavior and the environment just becoming progressively less fun and engaging. So what ended up, sort of happening this past week for me is I just hit that point where when I was logging into the game and looking to run Mythic Plus or do stuff outside of Raid, Not only was I just not really motivated to try and group up with these people who are online most days, but they would also just actively exclude me from participating in things because they just didn't like me for whatever reason it was. And so it just got to the point where I don't want to raid or play video games with people who don't want me around. That's just what it comes down to. And there's plenty of people on the team who liked me, and there were a lot of people who were sad to see me go, and a lot of people who very much sympathized with the situation as far as what was happening. But it comes down to I don't want to put myself through 100 plus pulls of Sylvanas with this group of people. That's really what it comes down to, right? The Sylvanas fight itself has its issues. We'll talk about those when we're going to do the rundown of that fight today. So we'll talk about those sorts of issues later on the show. But yeah, just basically up front, like it was an unfortunate toxic environment, and the officers only have one goal, and that's completing Prague, because I feel like they are looking at having to do a lot of rebuilding later on in this patch anyways. So they're like, might as well just put everything off until we get everyone their Sylvanas kill, and then we'll deal with it then, is what it sort of seems like. So not the healthiest mentality, and wasn't the healthiest experience. And I just sort of made the decision of, you know what, I would be willing to give up cutting edge and a Hall of Fame position title, whatever, because it's just not worth it to me to earn it with this group of people, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, it sucks because you've been through the ringer, I feel like, over the last 2 years or so, with the churn. And I mean, it's North America Alliance, high-end Mythic rating, and that's a small pool, and it's got to be really frustrating, man. I commend you for having the integrity to do things the right way, to do what's right for you. Like, yes, you're on the doorstep of Sylvanas, cutting edge, Hall of Fame guaranteed, if you just push through with this environment that's not good for you.
Yeah.
And I think some people maybe would feel pressure to just kind of take one for the team and toe the line and just tolerate it, and I think that's kind of a lesson, not even just for World of Warcraft or a raid team or whatever, but just life in general, any kind of place where there's social stakes, I think having the integrity to just stand up for yourself and say, this is what I need to do for me, this is the right thing to do, that always, I think, leads to better outcomes. And that's, that puts you where you want to get to, but more than, tolerating something that you shouldn't have to. So it sucks that you have to go through this whole process again, especially when you're like right at the doorstep of this tier. Like if everybody could have just minded their business and been nice to each other and not turned it into a cesspool for a couple weeks, and then maybe on reclears people start letting their true color show, maybe at least it wouldn't be as much of a pressure situation. But having to switch teams in the middle of a tier, in the middle of Prague, having to go through the whole process of like trying out with different teams and finding that whole social fit it's never fun at any level that you're doing it at, right? It's why we get so many questions of the show of like, how do I get into rating? How do I find a team? How do I work my way up to these rating goals? And it's like, you have to do a lot of work to establish relationships with people. That's how you do that, and it's not easy and it's not fast. So I'm sorry you're back in that spot. If you want to slum it with some heroics and some Mythic plus 17s with me, you got an open invite.
Well, I appreciate that, man, because who knows? I definitely right now have zero idea what exactly I want to do with the rest of this tier. Whether it's joining another Mythic team and sort of integrating into them during farm, which is sort of the best time to be recruiting, or whether it's more of the take a break, take a bit more of a casual approach, and casual compared to what I was doing, and do something like heroics or just M plus or dive into PvP or whatever it is I choose to do. It's one of those situations where when I left my last team, I very much was geared up and ready for Mythic raiding, so I wanted to Mythic raid. And now when I'm making this transition out of this team, I'm in much more of a mentality of, I could actually just take like a month and a half off from raiding and just not raid for that period of time and do the other things I want to do in the expansion and in the game, and have fun doing those things and just relax during this period of time before reintegrating into that kind of community. Because as you've talked about, that community has been really rough over the past probably 8 months to 10 months in what it's doing. So I almost feel like after Halls of Fame have closed and things have had time to settle, and the sort of teams that are going to collapse and reform have had a chance to start doing that, that might be the better time to look at getting back into things. Because right now I feel like there's a lot of people doing what you talked about of, I just want to hang in there until this tier's done. I'm going to get my Sylvanas kill, and then I'm going to take this big break, or I'm going to step away, or I'm going to leave this team, or and all of that churn is going to happen really soon.
That's a burnout recipe too. You know, that's the kind of thing that maybe you don't come back ever, or maybe you don't come back for years.
Yeah.
Because you're not doing it because you're having fun. You know, I think that's the big thing.
Yeah, you have to really, and that's sort of what I did, is you have to really think about, how much is this worth it to me, right? Like how much stress and anxiety and, discomfort and like not awkward social situations, feeling like people are mistreating you or disrespecting you, are you willing to take to sort of accomplish that goal? Is that goal really worth all of that to you? And it was like, no, you know what? Honestly, that Sylvanas fight, which we're going to talk about later, has so many issues that I'm like, I don't even want to, like, the fastest team who's killed Sylvanas, the fastest team did it in 83 pulls. All right. That's the fastest team that's killed it. I know of a team has members on it from the last raid team I was in that has broken the 250 pull mark on Sylvanas.
Oh, wow.
All right. Like, that has happened. So the variance there is huge. And we were 65 or 64 pulls in when I decided that I'm going to step out. They rated yesterday, so they're at 93 or 94 now. They haven't moved out of phase 1 yet. So they might be towards the 200 and something mark, which means that they might have another week and a half or 2 weeks of raiding at least on just Sylvanas to try and get that fight down. And that would have been another, 15 or 16 hours of my life that I would have not enjoyed playing the game.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's a big commitment. Yeah. I mean, that's, I think it's worth mentioning. Like, yeah, it's cool to kill the boss, but only if you're enjoying the ride. Like, I don't know. I say buy the ticket, take the ride on the show all the time.
Yeah.
And, if you're not enjoying the ride, then you can get off of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I very much feel like it was the right decision to make. I just need to I have that feeling that I always have whenever I'm in this position mentally, because I've been here a few times throughout World of Warcraft, where I'm like, I now have all of this free time and I need to decide how I want to divvy it back up again. Because you just get this big pool of, I don't have to log in and do Korthia dailies. I don't need to do my 4M pluses a week. I don't need to do raiding at this time. I don't need to do, so you're like, okay, so what do I want to do with that time? Because I can choose to go, I still want to put 10 hours towards this a week or 15 hours towards this a week. But you can sort of break it around, maybe get, another hobby involved or another gaming thing with friends involved or whatever it is, and shift up your schedule. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be interesting over this next week to have the adjustment period.
Yeah, for sure. It's an opportunity to just explore stuff you want to do in WoW or do other stuff. So,
yeah. So what did you get up to in WoW? I want to know. What did you get up to in WoW?
Well, actually, it was a pretty light week for me, all things considered. I played scheduled nights and I played during the day, but I didn't do Torghast at all. I didn't log in over the weekend at all, except for my scheduled raid and dungeon night. So, but it was productive because we re-cleared all the way up to Prague. We had we just took a first look at Sylvanas on Sunday. We just pulled her twice just to see what happens and see how far we could get. Because unfortunately, most of Wednesday night just went in the trash can because the server just wasn't functioning for Sanctum of Domination. The lag was so severe that we could barely operate our characters, and then the fight we were up to was Fate Scribe. And so there's a lot of stuff that needs to line up for Fate Scribe to work right. Everything needs to be in agreement as to where things are located in the room. Otherwise the rings don't work right. And we just couldn't overcome the server issue. So we basically lost half of Wednesday night, maybe more, because of the server issues, which was unfortunate. Luckily Sunday, everything was working better. So we came back and cleaned up. But we had one time where, when the intermission phase begins and all the rings start spinning around. Yeah. The rings spun for about 3 or 4 times as long as they're supposed to. No. They never stop spinning. We're like, okay, I guess the server's not it's not getting any better. So, and there's that one person out there who's just running in a circle trying to keep up with their rune, waiting for it to stop, right? There's always that, Yeah. Yeah, it was frustrating. I mean, you try to put a good face on it. We play this game a lot, and the service is usually pretty reliable. We have had issues with lagginess in Sanctum. That was the worst I've seen it. So, I think for me in that situation, the best thing to do is give it a couple shots. It wasn't clearing up. Best thing to do is, instead of beating your head against it or getting pissed off about it, just call it a little early, break into smaller groups, go do dungeons, go do something else. It wasn't the end of the world. It's just, I think we'd be a little bit farther along on Heroic Sylvanas if we had that extra hour and a half to have looked at it last week. So,
Right.
As far as dungeons go, I'm actually like north of 2080 Mythic Plus rating. We got a couple 17s in time this week, so we're getting into that range.
It was such a good week. Oh my god,
great week for Chronicle. Yeah, I mean, it felt great. The affixes were very accommodating. Trash was kind of just exploding, and as long as you're watching your bursting timers and stuff, and not stepping anywhere you weren't supposed to step, you can make up a lot of time in between those bosses. And the affixes weren't really a factor during the boss fight, so that felt really good. And man, I'll tell you what, I finally got my 5th domination socket last week. I was only running with 4, but it's not that big of a deal, because for Prot War you really just want Blood Link. That Blood Link is so good that nothing else even really matters that much. But now I think I have everything except like some niche trinkets that I use, and my ring from Heroic Denathrius. Everything else is above 226, so everything's like actually season 2 now, except for those, a couple pieces that are just really key because they have some unique element to them. And man, the power ramp, I'm really starting to feel it in dungeons, in raid, in Torghast. Like Torghast, it north of 240 item level with rank 5 Bloodlink is a much different story than Torghast was a month ago. So, the power's ramping up. I'm getting my conduits ranked up. I got a bunch of 252s now. I'm actually using Valor points to power stuff up because I have pieces that are just kind of laying around, and it's like, hey, might as well bump these up to 246 because I could slot them in for raid set or for dungeon set. So really having a good time. I'm trying to stress out less about having every single slot at a particular item level and just finding stuff that's like season 2 appropriate for heroic rating and, Mythic plus 15. And just enjoying the process. And I think there's a lot of good pieces out there between the Sanctum stuff. And, we had the dungeon event last week. So an extra piece of heroic Sanctum loot last week turned into a Dom Socket chest for me, which was a 13 item level upgrade. So really starting to feel like I got that season 2 power now.
Yeah, it's I actually had the exact same experience with Torghast, where I went into Torghast and just crushed the first wing that I was in. I think I had 250 points or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just dominated it, and I was like, wow, okay, something changed, because last week felt really bad. Like I like last week I was like, man, you know what? I guess that 252 required or recommended or whatever really is important, and sort of feeling it. Like I did the event last week with the Hound, and it was very smooth, but getting the like above 200 points to get the flawless was challenging to do. Whereas this week, I just sort of went in and like just rolled it, and I couldn't believe it. So
between gear and tower knowledge, it's like it's a whole different universe.
Yeah, well, the big one I'm noticing is the tower knowledge that increases the amount of bonus you get towards your big empowerment by 20%. So I got that up twice, so now it's 4. So every time I kill an elite, I get 40% more contribution towards that bar, and so I fill that bar up really fast, which then lets
that's a sneaky good upgrade for sure. Yeah,
which then lets you use it more often, which then increases the bonus you get from it, which then increases your score by a lot. So it's like this.
Plus, it's increasing your time because you're killing stuff faster.
Exactly. Like stuff faster. Yeah,
like it doesn't seem like a great upgrade, like just on its face. Because like, oh, okay, whatever. But then once you have it and you notice how much bigger your empowered bonuses start getting and how much under par or closer to par your timers are getting, it's like, oh, maybe that's why, because I'm doing, a third of the floor with empowerment.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I was like, that was one of the things I was buying recently. I'm looking forward to getting to that final row, but I fully feel like the catch up of this system is very good if you are getting tower knowledge. Like even if you aren't getting tower knowledge every week and you're just waiting till you're geared enough and you go in, because the cap increases every week, you could then buy out a whole bunch of stuff at the same time. I think the tower knowledge system is a very good catch up system to getting people all of their flawless, because it's just like it's such incremental power each week, and it's very different ways of buffing your character when you're doing your runs. So I like it.
And
I really
it has a lot of synergy with the way the bonus points come in. Things are going to get you more powers, or it's going to give you more empowerment. It's going to up your damage so you can kill stuff faster. Like it all works hand in hand to get you those 5 stars.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go get into what's going on this week, because we still want to cover a boss later in this show. All right, this week in Warcraft, it's the Pet Battle bonus event, meaning pet battle experience gained from pet battles increased by 200%, and there's a PvP pet battle quest up to win 5 of them, which rewards you with a ultimate pet battle training stone, instantly leveling a pet to level 25. So if that's something you're into, dive into that. We also have Aranamonos, the Ever-Branching, the big Tiernan in Ardenweald up as a world boss, meaning that you can get your 200 eye-level Covenant ability conduits. Those are something you're still looking for, or your 207 eye-level plate wrist, mail wrist, leather hands and legs, cloth feet, and a crit verse ring off of the Tiernan. And Jason, which memories is old Aranamonos dropping for us?
So you got Fevered Incantation for mages, Surging Shots for hunters, and Verdant Infusion for druids. So if you got a mage, a hunter, or a druid, and your whole powers panel isn't all lit up and nice and ready for you, make sure you go out and do the world boss. Plus 500 anima if you're all caught up on renown, or caught up to the point where that becomes 500 anima. Makes your 1,000 anima weekly really easy for some even more renown. There's still a lot of good reasons to do the old world bosses.
Yeah. Morgeth, Tormentor of the Damned, is the world boss who is consistently up in the Maw over in Desmond. This guy drops your adaptive armor fragment and condensed animosphere conduits. If you don't have either of those, you can get them from world quests and in Korthia. That's the word I was trying to remember. Or you can get them off this guy. He also drops the Shard of Rev, the Leech Blood Domination Shard, which you can also get off Sylvanas if you don't get off this guy, as well as 233 eye level gear for cloth wrist and legs, leather hands and waist, mail hands and feet, plate waist and legs, or a mastery trinket with a main stat proc. All right, as far as this week goes, dungeon-wise, we have Plaguefall and The Other Side, meaning The Other Side is now 2 weeks running, because it was The Other Side and The Other Side last week, so now we have The Other Side, The Other Side Returns this week. And Plaguefall.
Wait, are you suggesting that there's motivation to run The Other Side this week?
There is, yes, there is motivation.
I can't believe it.
Side. And PvP wise,
there's a lot of good gear in The Other Side, is what I'm indicating.
Yes, yeah, there is. Actually, I still need to get my tank trinket out of there, so I'm gonna be focusing on doing that. As far as PvP quests go, we have the rated BGs and epic BGs this week. So be sure you're checking that out. And we got Deepwind Dunk as the brawl. That's the fun little.
No, I'm sorry. It's Shadowpan Showdown.
Never mind. Shadowpan Showdown is what we got this week. I was like, wait a minute. We just had Deepwind Dunk. That was last week. This week is Shadowpan Showdown, which is Tiger's Peak Arena. Basically, you'll race for control of a center control point and activate it. One of 2 bosses when you're doing it, and the first team to kill the other team's boss wins. This is like the Shadowpan Arena. That's where you're in the Tiger's Peak Arena, sort of that you're in. And basically, as those 2 giant statues, this is the one where it's an arena and they have the platforms off to the right and the left, and in the center they have 2 large statues. And there's these 2 creatures that come to life and fight each other, and you're trying to assist them and kill the other person's one. So it's not only like a arena match where 2 teams are fighting, but you're also trying to kill an NPC and defend an NPC, which is kind of cool. It's actually a pretty cool one. We haven't seen this one in a long time. I remember doing it and being like, this is really weird. Like, it just threw me off from what I'm used to doing. But it reminds me so much of
PvPvE type of thing, basically.
But it's like Heroes of the Storm has like that Overwatch map with the robots that would fight and stuff. And I don't know. It reminded me of that concept. And I was like, this is really cool when they mix this stuff up like this. So there's something to it. So
I don't think I've ever done this actually, but I do like PvPvE in other games like MOBAs, and Destiny has a pretty cool PvPvE mode as well, where you're competing against other players and you can interact with them and kill them, but your main goal is to kill these PvE mobs. So it sounds kind of like in that vein, which I have enjoyed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the last time I found this in our notes was in May of 2018.
Yeah.
So we may have missed one somewhere along the way, but I think this brawl has been gone for an exceptionally long time, which is probably why I didn't even remember it when I saw it on the calendar.
Yeah, it has been gone for a long time. It hasn't been up in a long time. I know that because I think this is one of the ones that broke. That in the first week it was out, they actually swapped it out like halfway through the week or 3/4 of the way through the week because it broke. Something broke in it. So I guess it just took them a long time to fix it. It probably wasn't very high on the priority list. I feel like brawls are pretty low on the let's fix these right away list because they just cycle different ones in and just pull one out of rotation.
Taking one out of rotation is not going to be like, people aren't going to cry too hard about it. I mean, it does stink when something cool like Deep Wind Dunk is out for so long.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think now with they have them on a weekly rotation, that we might, the busted ones might get fixed a bit more.
Yeah. We also have Trial of Style coming back next week. That's going to be pretty fun for a lot of people. That's the 31st of August until September 4th. So if you're someone who, we don't know whether there's going to be new styles in there for you to try and get. But they are, at least decent older ones if that's something you're looking to get. And either way, it's fun stuff to do with your friends. I think it's 6 people can queue up.
Yeah, it's a 6-player scenario. We'll talk more about it next week, but get ready for it because it does only run for 5 days and it only runs once every 6 months. I don't expect that there'll be new rewards this time, but there are 4 sets per armor class, so you're probably missing at least one of them. And if you keep up with your friends and everybody gets to win, you just decide who's going to win, and then you win, and then you move on to the next one, and then you rotate through and just vote for whoever's going to win the next one. And it's one of the coolest and most unique events they do. Super fun thing to do with your friends. So keep an eye out for it. It'll be live by the next time we talk, but just to give a heads up about something that you don't have a lot of time to do.
Yeah, the other heads up I guess I'll give while we're here is we are now a week away from the next Darkmoon Fair, because the next Darkmoon Fair is going to be on September 5th is when it starts up. So just be ready for that too. So just be aware. Anyways, Mythic Plus affixes this week is Fortified, Spiteful, and Grievous. Okay. This means that non-boss enemies have 20% more health and inflict 30% increased damage. Fiends rise from the corpses of non-boss enemies and pursue random players. And injured players suffer increased damage over time until healed above 90% health. Okay, so unfortunately, Fortified and Spiteful work together. The Spiteful ads are going to have more health, and they're going to hit harder, so you have to be a little bit more careful because they're going to be more dangerous. You do need to CC these ads, or at least target them down. My favorite thing to do is CC them. If you sort of have a good enough plan with your group and you have something like Mass Entangle, or any kind of slow or knockback or that kind of thing, these ads' health decay over time. They naturally die on their own. So if you kill a pack of mobs and move quickly to the next pack of mobs, when the fiends rise up from the one behind you, you can just CC them there and deal with the new pack that you're fighting, and they'll just die off on their own behind you. It always feels really bad when I mass entangle a group of them, and then the group just stands around killing them, because I'm like, we could just go to the next.
Just run away.
Just go
run
to the
around
next
them,
thing.
yeah.
We're good. Just stop hitting them. We're good. Just let's go. So yeah, let's be sure that groups are taking advantage of their CCs because it's super helpful against Spiteful. And then Grievous, it's just it's a healer problem, right? So no one really it's not a big deal. Healers have got that. They just
it's not even a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the thing here is, right, Grievous. I think Grievous is worse with Tyrannical because bosses tend to have things that hit random targets or AoE, and then it's harder for the healer to dig out the whole group. Fort Spiteful Grievous, like the Grievous part of that sounds bad, but if you get hit with a Fortified Spiteful ad, you're probably just dead anyway. Grievous isn't going to be much of a factor. So that's okay. I think this week is a bit of a mixed bag. I think in practice it's not going to be that bad, especially if, like you say, if you can use space wisely to not waste time on Spiteful Ghosts and you can knock them away or root them and just keep moving. But definitely a bit more challenging than I feel like we've had 2 or 3 really good Mythic Plus rotations, and this week is a little bit ramped up from where we've been sitting the last few weeks.
Still not terrible though. I'm still not. This isn't like a punishing week. It's just a week where you got to be a little bit more careful with what you're doing. The Grievous stacks are going to get up there. Healing yourself. Every direct heal removes a stack of Grievous. So be sure that you're just if you can heal yourself to help your healer out, do it. It's super helpful to do. Yeah, so just keep that in mind when it comes to these sorts of things. As far as there's something else you want to add there?
I mean, the only other thing I would say would be just try to pull kind of big, which seems a bit counterintuitive because it's dangerous trash week. But you got to get the most out of whatever AoE cleave you have in your group, because you're not going to be able to make up time, quote unquote, like moving through the dungeon on trash otherwise. Also, Spiteful it's like an on death. It is an on death effect, obviously, but it's not one like bursting like we just had, where you have to really time out when stuff dies. Obviously, you need to pay attention when ghosts are out, and if a ghost is fixated on you, and you probably want to get like a weak aura or something that's going to yell at you about your fixated ghost. But yeah, I think this week, if you're trying to push timers and get stuff timed, maybe get some rating, you got to be a little bit bold and go for that extra pack, and just use the space and use your tools.
Yeah. All right. This week we got a couple of blue posts. This one comes in about a sort of like stealth patch of 9.1.5 achievement stuff coming in. Jason, you want to cover this thing from Linksy?
Yeah, sure. So this came out this is really weird. And really good news. I don't want to frame the way I'm framing this at the top.
New things are good.
Yeah, I'm just confused because they didn't do the traditional like blog post, or they didn't do like a forum post that kind of ran down what 9.1.5 was going to be. Linksy just hopped into a thread where people were talking about potential customization options for allied races and whatnot, and she just dropped this bomb that 9.1.5 was close. It's in development. We don't have any real details about any other types of content or PTR or anything as we're recording this, but they're talking about it in blue text, so it's got to be around the corner.
Right.
So the first thing that Linksy talked about was about new character customization options, and I have to call Blizzard out on breaking a promise, because at BlizzCon Line they promised that there'd be no new customization options in Shadowlands, and they're breaking that promise because there will be new ones in 9.1.5. And so we're going to get confirmed new character customization options for Nightborne and Lightforged Draenei, including new hairstyles, hair colors, facial hair, skin colors, accessories, horns, tail length, tattoos, and more. And also on the menu for 9.1.5 are ear size options for Void Elves, new travel forms for Druids, new soul shapes for Night Fae, new critter shapes for Night Fae, where you soul shape into a squirrel or other small critters. You can only use them in rested areas, but that sounds like an interesting option. And an option to soul shape and critter shape into randomly collected appearances. I love that, because you always get way more stuff than you can use, and manually swapping it all out is daunting. But maybe one time I turn into a frog and one time I turn into a dragon. Like that kind of surprise is fun. And new toys. Linksy went on that post to say that next on the menu, probably not going to make it for 9.1.5, but the next race we're looking at is High Mountain Tauren, who are like one of my favorite races in the game and already have some cool customization options, but just not a broad slate of them. So that's cool, and that's coming up. And then she hopped in that thread a couple days later and said, hey, by the way, we saw what you guys were talking about, and we talked to the art team, and you're getting 5 more hair colors for Void Elves in 9.1.5 as well. So they're just adding even more stuff in. A couple days later, she dropped by and dropped a couple screenshots of some of the new options that they're working on for Lightforged Draenei and Female Nightborne.
Dude, those body tattoos
Draenei stuff looks really cool.
Oh.
Yeah, really, really cool stuff. And some great new, I think some customization options for the Nightborne that, to me, like, it looks way more like what Nightborne looked like in my head from playing through Legion and doing Suramar and fighting them. Like, I have a female Nightborne that I played in BFA, and I was never really happy with the way I could make her look. And there's some new jewelry options, some new hairstyles, some new eye options in terms of eye shape and color. Really cool stuff they're showing off.
I mean,
so that was like the customization piece that we learned about last week.
Yeah, the body tattoos for Draenei, you're gonna see a lot of Draenei without their tops on. There's gonna be a lot of shirtless Draenei walking around.
Topless Lightforged.
That's right, yeah. Because it just looks really cool to see, and putting anything over it almost feels like it's just not done. It's just not appropriate to do.
Well, and it's such a part of the Lightforged identity too. It's they're like literally like Lightforged infused in that way. It's like they earn the tattoos, for lack of a better term. So it's a big part of the character's identity, and having more options is really cool.
Yeah, I've already put in my request for a hippo druid travel form some sort of shapeshift.
So you want to travel form but go slower. Oh, it could be a water. Maybe it could be in the water.
Be one of the water forms. It could be. Whatever they want to do with it. All I know is I have a soul shape for a hippo, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they just incorporated that into normal druid forms, I'd be totally okay with having a hippo form.
Yeah, we got hippo mounts. I think its time has come. Yeah, we got mounts. We got soul shapes. Yeah, we need travel form.
I will say that the random soul shape choice option would be super dangerous for me. Because if I soul shaped and became a giant lizard versus a tiny little critter, shape thing, it would throw me off. I'm just picturing Painsmith fight or something, and I soul shape and I become this very large form, and I soul shape again and become this real tiny form. It would be.
Yeah, I'm used to using the frog, which is pretty gigantic. So yeah, that could be disorienting.
Yeah, it's just something to consider. You become the fox in one of them, and then you become the giant frog in the other one, and you'd be like, whoa, okay, this feels different. I think all this is great. I mean, it's just great to get more customization. If they're going to break a promise, this is certainly one of the ones that I'm fine with.
But I mean, my brain's all tingly this last week, just waiting for more info on 9.15. I enjoy 9.1 quite a bit. I think it's a good patch. I think .5 patches have typically been very good for the game since I started doing them on a more regular basis back in Legion, because they really refine what we're playing, tend to add quality of life, tend to add stuff that's just straight up fun, just makes the game more fun, like cosmetics. Yeah. So that's, hopefully we'll have more to share on the show very soon about PTR notes or something. But we did get another note about another feature plan for 9.15, which is adding solo queue to island adventures. So the idea is that you'll be able to queue up solo or with a party of up to 3 players, just like a private queue island expedition. This is a very niche thing, but it's cool. There's a lot of cosmetics seated in this system. And if you or your buddies are, pet, mount, cosmetic toy hunters, you probably didn't get everything you wanted out of island expeditions in BFA, especially considering how stingy the system was when it launched and how quickly people checked out at doing their island expeditions. So this is like a second lease on life for this mode to a degree. I think that people who really like collecting will get a lot out of this, especially if it doesn't scale up. If you're level 60 doing level 50 island expeditions and just kind of crushing through stuff.
There's one important thing to note. All right, we have an AoE cap. Keep that in mind. If you pull the entire island, most classes will only kill 5 things at a time.
But if they're level 50, they'll die really fast.
They'll die very fast. Just keep that. But just keep in mind, it might
kill
take
5
you a
things
while.
every GCD.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the.
I assume you'll still be competing against the AI.
I assume so, and you'll crush the AI.
Yeah, they don't say here if they'll be level 60 or level 50. I assume they'll be level 50 because it's a BFA feature. And so yeah, it should just be a nice little romp. The islands are really cool, levels. The designs were great. The system never really came together, but at least this way you can kind of enjoy it at your own pace and hopefully get the rewards that you were shooting for out of it.
Yeah,
I think there's just no reason not to do this, right?
Agreed.
Obviously you have to invest some energy in building this so that it works, right? It doesn't do this now, so you need somebody to actually do the labor to make it do this. But I think it's worth whatever it takes to have this feature stand up forever now as a source where you can get cool mounts and pets and toys, cosmetic armor, whatever. Just no matter who you're playing with or as or whatever you want to do, you just level up and go do it.
Well, once they've made this scaling really work well and whatever it is work out, it's also a cool way to level characters. So it's might be one of those fun things to do with friends to level characters too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that all those sorts of considerations start going into it. So it's just something to keep in mind. But I just want to caution everyone that the island expeditions of BFA, when we had corruption and all that kind of silliness going on, this is a different thing now because we're at a very different place in the game as far as AoE cap and damage and how all that works. So I'm sure this won't feel like it felt during BFA. It'll feel different than it felt then. So just keep that in mind going into it. This isn't a nostalgia trip where they're trying to make it feel the same. This is we're enabling this feature so that people can get the cosmetics they want.
Yeah, I mean,
cool.
I assume you're still gonna, all your Shadowland stuff will work inside it, I would imagine. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you wanted to, you could put on your Heart of Azeroth and your Azerite armor if you still got it, and use your traits because it's
you
BFA
could.
content, so it'll work.
It's true.
I
It
mean,
should work.
I don't know if it'd be a benefit, but you could do it.
Yep. You still do your I don't, maybe is the beam AoE capped? Like, I don't know. Like,
I don't.
like that Kamehameha that everyone was doing with the Heart of Azeroth, is that thing AoE
Yeah,
capped?
maybe
I don't
not.
know,
Yeah,
man. If
maybe
it's not,
just
then
load up your
pull
your
the whole
essences
island,
and go.
hit that
Yeah.
essence once, and then you just kill everything. Like, that'd be kind of cool too. As far as hotfixes go, there are a few ones that came in here. For Mage, they fixed an issue with Harmonic Echo, the rune carving power not damaging enemies on the 4th stack of Radiant Spark vulnerability, specifically to Kyrian. This is I love that this is now where we're at with hotfixes, where they're like, this one ability for this one class's one spec, when they're inside this particular covenant, isn't working properly, and we're tuning that. And you're like, okay, good. So they've gotten the really broad stuff out of the way, and they're focusing in on these little tiny things that are still sticking out. So I like seeing those come in. Those are always good to see. For fire, they fixed an issue with Sun King's Blessing, the rune carving power triggering after consuming 9 hot streaks instead of the intended 8. So good. It's supposed to trigger sooner, and it wasn't, so they fixed that. And then they've just done some other fixes for some other classes too that sort of stand out. One here for Warlock, where the Demonic Momentum Conduit will now grant the correct amount of movement speed at 252. More people are getting up to that 252. So things like it actually scaling properly or not giving you way too much movement speed is certainly good. What I love the most about movement speed stuff like this inside raiding is there's something about getting a Savage Roar on Painsmith when you're running towards the edge and someone goes flying off the edge because they weren't expecting the Savage Roar to happen and the movement speed to kick in. There's a few abilities or conduits that trigger. For me, one of them is on critical strikes, I gain movement speed, and it can only happen once every 10 seconds. Where I just suddenly get this, I'm moving in a direction, I'm comfortable with my momentum, and I get this huge boost of speed all of a sudden, and it's very surprising. Right. So I find that kind of stuff fun, and this just reminded me of that, because I definitely Savage Roar when we were doing Painsmith farm or something, and I watched one of our raiders just go flying off of the edge because they weren't expecting it. So yeah, same thing with the powered shields that give people movement speed. That's always a fun one to get too. As far as creatures and NPCs,
yeah,
go ahead.
Anything people aren't expecting, and then suddenly they're just going way faster than they were a minute ago. Yeah, that can lead to some problems.
It can. The creatures and NPCs hotfix area, they have Fleshwing should now always correctly fly to the ground, even if its initial flight down is interrupted by combat. Well, that's good, because it would suck to not be able to kill Fleshwing.
Please shut off your pet taunts when Fleshwing is in the vicinity. I have seen him bug out on the rock and get stuck there because pets taunted him onto the rock. You don't have to fight him on the rock. Fight him on the ground. He won't get stuck. He won't evade, and you can kill him and get loot.
Nice. And then as far as dungeons and raids, characters must now be level 60 to list group finder groups for Mythic Plus, dungeons, or Shadowlands raids. This just makes sense. Like,
how is this not in there? Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a great change. I mean, this is the way it should be. Yeah. Although I'm gonna take the cynical side. This is just so Blizzard could sell more boosts. Because you have to boost your character and then level to 60, and then you can spam.
You can spam your sales
group finder with your
Oh my goodness.
I don't know. I'm sure somebody actually believes that in their heart. But this is great. You shouldn't be able. Why would a character below level 60 be able to list Mythic Plus dungeons or Shadowlands raids? They can't participate in them. There's no reason for them to be able to do that. Just clogs up the channel with nonsense. People trying to sell stuff or scam you.
Yep. Painsmith Raznal, they fixed an issue causing players to sometimes be hit twice by the physical damage of Shadowsteel Chains. That fight doesn't need to be any harder, so I'm glad they resolved that.
And those chains hit hard. If you survive the first hit, then you die because you got hit twice by accident. Oh no.
Yeah. And if you get hit twice, to be clear, you should only get hit twice in a hilarious moment where you're bouncing between the two other people who have chains. That's the only time it should happen. Because at least then you have a good laugh of, I can't move my character, I'm just bouncing back and forth between these two people, and then you die. So yeah, that's the only time that should happen. If you don't have the comedic value of it, it's not worth it. So I'm glad they fixed it. Halls of Atonement, the Depraved Obliterator's Wicked Bolt cast time has been increased to 2 seconds from 1.5. Thank you, because longer cast times means easier to interrupt abilities, which means
doesn't sound like a lot, but this will save a life.
Yeah. It will make it easier to interrupt, and it's just a big damage reduction by 25% reduced damage basically, because it takes them that much longer to cast it. As far as items go, the Soul Twining Crescent and Deathbound Shard, which are the things that you use to upgrade your conduits for your specialization. We wanted to highlight this because last week I was saying you just have to change your loot spec. It's not loot spec. It's actually your whole entire spec. You actually have to switch from Guardian to Resto to be able to start getting Resto ones. So I've filled out all of my balance ones. I got a Deathbound Shard from completing my Adamantine vaults when I did my flawless run last week, and I went to use it and it said you couldn't use it, and it didn't matter if I changed my loot spec, it still couldn't use it. It was in the developer's note. You actually have to change your entire specialization to the other one to use the new one. So just keep that in mind. That is one of the things that they mentioned last week. And of course, the other thing was that the Deathbound Shards are now more likely to drop from Adamantine vaults, which was great because I saw one, which made me happy. So that's good.
It seems more or less guaranteed if you do it 12. I mean, it might not be 100%, but I have never done vaults on 12 and not gotten a Deathbound Shard the first time for the week.
Yeah, the Chronicle of Lost Memories, which is the item that allows you to learn legendary recipes or memories that you don't already have, is now available for 2,000 catalog research at tier 3 of Archivist Codex Rep. So this is just another one of those things of, there's not enough early rewards for catalog research, which is why so many people are basically just waiting until they hit tier 6 before spending the 55 or 60,000 catalog research they happen to have. So this at least gives people who are on that journey something to spend on a little bit sooner. So you can actually go, hey, you know what? This is an easy way for me to get some extra memories on my character and get the legendaries crafted that I want to craft. So that's a nice thing they threw in there.
Yeah, and if you don't want to do Nathria LFR or something, so you can get a memory and you have some research lying around. Yeah, this is a cool item. It came in last week. Check it out if you're missing memories or you're trying to catch up on alt or something. It's a decent option. Getting to tier 3 and then having 2K lying around is a little bit much, but if you're just kind of plugging away on Korthia stuff anyway, it's not that much research in the grand scheme of things, and if it saves you the trouble of having to do something you don't want to do, then it's a win.
Yeah. They also increased the amount of Korthite crystals that drop from the Maw Assault box, the Korthia weekly box, and the Broker Daily quest, so expect to get a bunch more Korthite crystals just in general. I actually early on went and just bought a bunch off the auction house, which is the other way to get these things if you're looking for them, because I just wanted to be sure I could craft the legendaries I wanted to craft when I wanted to craft them. So that was an easy way to do it, and I've just sort of been banking them up since then. But they made them a little bit easier to get, so everybody else can make sure that they are getting them.
The Korthite is flowing now.
Yes, it is. All right, with that, we are going to pop down to our raid coverage for this week, because we are covering The Reckoning, which is the Sylvanas Windrunner encounter, which launched this week in LFR. And it goes something like this. With Oribos in peril and a desperate battle at the pinnacle of the pinnacle of the sanctum begins. Standing between the jailer and the mortals, who would stop him? Sorry. Wait a second here. Sylvanas isn't on our side? I'm confused. So she's not. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
No, we're not. Wow. Well, most of us are not helping Sylvanas. No.
Standing between the jailer and the mortals who would stop him is Sylvanas Windrunner. With no masks left to wear, the Banshee Queen unleashes her full power to protect the Banished One while his ultimate plan unfolds. So apparently she's the last raid boss of the tier, and we actually fight her and stuff. So that's a thing. Mm-hmm. So we're now here. After this episode, we'll be able to talk about spoilers from the video without anyone worrying about it, because we've now talked about the fight and who it is that we're fighting here. So the battle against Sylvanas atop the Tower of Torghast while the jailer remains elusive. That's basically what this is we just fight Sylvanas on the top of Torghast. And so the initial room that you are in is just a 300-yard circle. It is a ginormous circular platform that you are on. And expect Sylvanas to leap and dive and end up all over this platform. So Jason, how do tanks deal with this elusive Windrunner?
It involves a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, this fight is simple from a tanking perspective, but very punishing. The main thing that you'll notice when you fight Sylvanas is she casts this thing called Windrunner, and she starts flipping all over the platform. But they say she's not actually moving. She gains during Windrunner, and while she's like backflipping all over the platform, she'll be doing Withering Fire, Desecrating Shot, and Shadow Dagger, which we'll talk about more in a moment.
Yeah.
But it says that she's not actually moving. She's vulnerable at the spot where she casts this, and I find her a little bit difficult to interact with reliably during Windrunner. For the most part, it seems like melee abilities are landing, but I don't know. Maybe it's just a psychological thing because the model's not there, but it is a little bit weird. Anyway, your tanks and melee should not be following her around while she's Windrunnering.
Yeah.
Just stand there and stab and punch.
Ignore the fact that she just flipped behind you. It's okay. You can still cast in front of you. Your ability should work. They should.
Sometimes some stuff might not quite understand what it's supposed to be doing.
The other thing I'd highlight real quick for tags here is this makes it incredibly difficult to move Sylvanas Windrunner around the platform because she's almost always doing something, and mobs don't tend to move when they're doing something. So
yep, she is frequently Windrunnering, and that means that she's frequently backflipping all over the platform.
Yeah.
Now, there are two different things tanks need to worry about in phase 1 and very similar in phase 3. Ranger's Heartseeker is the first one to talk about. Sylvanas gains a stack of Ranger's Heartseeker every 5 seconds. Upon reaching 3 stacks, she can replace a Ranger shot with a triple burst of Ranger's Heartseeker into her target. Each arrow inflicts physical damage and shadow damage and applies Banshee's Mark. Banshee's Mark inflicts shadow damage every second for 18 seconds and stacks. So this hits pretty hard. You pretty much want to taunt swap every one of these, and you want to avoid ever taking 2 Ranger's Heartseekers in a row. This combo is pretty brutal. It's punishing. But that's not all, because she also has Wailing Arrow, which is always in phase 1, is always going to go at a tank as long as one is alive. She launches a terror-infused arrow at a player, inflicting shadow damage and additionally inflicting shadow damage to all other players, decreasing in damage based on distance from the point of impact. So this is fall-off damage. The group should be roughly in the middle of this giant circle, and the Wailing Arrow target should be at the circumference of the circle, waiting for the arrow to hit before getting back in the group. So it's a little bit weird with having these two things to kind of switch around. I find that Wailing Arrow doesn't hurt too bad as long as you actually do it right. If you get out of the group with it, if you direct traffic away from the tank, and the tank and healers are prepared for that hit, it's not too bad. Ranger's Heartseeker is a thing that just does like a shocking amount of damage if you kind of are sleepwalking and somebody takes a second one. So it's a bit of a frustrating tank dance in phase 1, especially because of Windrunner going off all the time. But what you actually need to do is pretty simple from a tanking perspective.
Yeah. Now, the other things that you're going to be doing, there's 3 other abilities that you'd mentioned, but there's even more than that. We have Withering Fire, where Sylvanas releases a volley of arrows that inflict shadow damage to players, and it leaves behind a barbed arrow in the target, which is a permanent bleed that stacks on the target that does damage every 3 seconds. And the only way to remove this barbed arrow is to get chains of domination from other arrows. So basically, she'll fire out several, they say salvos now. It's not volleys. These are now salvos of domination arrows, which stick down into the ground. And the people who are standing closest to these arrows will then get chained to them. And the arrows will try and drag these people towards them. And basically, whoever gets chained, it will remove the barbed arrow debuff from them. So you sort of have to pay attention to who in your group is getting several stacks of this. 1 stack is pretty manageable for the group. But once you get above 2 or 3, sometimes 4 stacks on someone, you either need to use something like Blessing of Protection, which removes the bleed, which is great. So paladins, definitely take advantage of your Blessing of Protections. I think also dwarves can also just actually racial this off as a bleed. But it's the main mechanic for removing them is Domination Chains, where She'll fire these volleys up. You don't stand on top of them, but you just stand closer than other people are standing to them. And you will get chained to them, and that will remove your bleed. And so that's how you remove those bleeds. The next ability is Desecrating Shot, where she loses a cavalcade of arrows. There's all these different amounts of arrows. I don't know what the difference is between a salvo and a cavalcade and a volley. But
I don't know, but kudos to whoever did the dungeon journal for this and had the thesaurus ready for multiple different ways to say a bunch of.
Exactly. And these arrows erupt for shadow damage to players within the area effect. So basically you get a swirly on the ground. You don't stand in the swirly. These swirlies can come in a bunch of different patterns, or they can come in just an actual larger swirly. Just don't stand in any swirlies. They're all bad. So just get out of all of them, including...
They look really cool in this phase. Like the spell graphic and the patterns they make are great. Try not to get mesmerized by them. They're still bad, even though they look pretty.
Yeah. There's one that's like a chain of DNA that is just a nightmare to try and dodge properly. So just, you definitely don't stand in that. And then Shadow Dagger is just damage. Like basically Sylvanas just heaves corrupted blades, inflicting shadow damage at players. So like you're just going to have generic damage that goes out on this fight, and that's part of the generic damage that Sylvanas does. Now she also does a Veil of Darkness, where she will jump up into the air and disappear, which means, hey, guess what? You can't target her or do any damage to her while she does this. And then she reappears on top of a player and does a ginormous circle that you have to run out of. It's a very dark, ginormous swirly, and you want to get out of swirlies. So everyone has to run out of this swirly before she finishes the cast time, because she will do a ton of damage to whoever gets hit by this, and will put a big old healing absorb on them, where you basically need to heal through this healing absorb on that player. On heroic and up, you actually want to bring this sort of like small circle around your feet that you will have while you have this debuff to other players, and sort of spread and share the stacks of this healing absorb with other people so that healers can clear it easier. Because you might have like 1,000,000 healing that needs to be absorbed off of you, but it's kind of easier to AoE heal that 1,000,000 healing down off of 8 or 9 people than it is healing one person for 1,000,000. So just keep that in mind. That is Veil of Darkness, and this sort of pairs up with those Domination Chains, right? So you'll have people who get chained, and you're DPSing down these Domination Chain arrows to break the chains off of these people before she does Veil of Darkness and jumps on top of all of them, and they can't get out of it because they're all chained down to arrows, right? Now you can use movement speed abilities like Soul Shape and Savage Roar and whatnot to help people get out of the big Veil of Darkness quickly, especially if they have chains still attached to them. If you're soul shaping, or you're using your stepping through the mirror, through the shadows, whatever the thing is for Venthyr, or whatever it is you have, leaping to get out of this if you're chained down, because the chain will be pulling you in, so you'll need to get out and stay out while this big Veil of Darkness goes off. You've already discussed Wailing Arrow and Ranger's Heartseeker, so it's just Banshee's Mark that we have left over, where she inflicts shadow damage every 18 seconds, and this ability stacks. And so you just have to keep that in mind with the Banshee's Mark on tanks to make sure that is being taken care of and they don't die from Banshee's Mark.
Yeah, a way that I like to get people out of Veil of Darkness is to yell into voice chat, "Get out of Defile." For people who've been raiding for a while, it seems to wake them up.
Right.
It does look similar, but luckily it doesn't work like Defile. But that's really it for this phase. It's actually pretty simple. It looks cool. There's a lot of cool spell effects. Sylvanas' model and animations look really cool. But it's pretty much a do raiding phase. Don't stand in stuff, get away with the big explodey thing and DPS the boss down. I think if you're working on this fight on LFR or normal mode, feel free to be like aggressively dropping bleeds on the Domination Chains. On heroic, you have to be really careful because the arrows that you use to have the chains drop your bleeds have a calamity circle around them, a 4-yard circle, and if you come into contact with that circle, you just straight up die. That doesn't happen on normal and below, so you can kind of practice and you can safely get those bleeds off, because I think if everybody's ignoring those bleeds, you're going to test your healers unnecessarily. There's a lot of avoidable damage on this phase. There is also a lot of unavoidable damage, but you can also mitigate that unavoidable damage to a large degree. So pretty much don't stand in stuff and keep your bleed stacks low. And what is it, 84% where she pushes into the intermission.
So yeah, it's 83.92 or something like that is what it actually, it's some bizarre, I know this just because of Mythic, because you literally have to wait until very particular abilities finish before pushing this boss, so that very particular abilities happen later in the fight and cooldowns are up later in the fight. So yeah, it's some ridiculous particular number under 84%, but 84% is what you should go with. That's the number. Yeah. I will mention the other thing about those domination chains on heroic with the purple circle. It's just a small purple circle at the base of the arrow. This is why I say don't stack on the arrows if you want to get chains. Often you're like, I have a bunch of bleeds, I have to make sure I get this, so I'm going to stand really close to them. The closer you are to the arrow, it almost feels like it pulls you faster. So I would just say, like, you want to be like 5 to 10 yards away from these things at least, and be ready to move to run away from them, because if you get pulled into that purple circle and die immediately, it sucks. So just be sure that that doesn't happen to you. Yeah, so you go into the intermission, and so this is weird, right? Because we have phase 1, 2, and 3, but there's this intermission between 1 and 2, and this intermission is Sylvanas becomes immune, basically. She has damage reduced by 99%, and there's just a bunch of stuff to deal with. So we get Domination Chains where she fires out arrows, but she literally fires out an arrow for every raider, is what basically happens. So everyone is going to get chained, and so you have to break everyone's chains in this phase. And at the same time, she's doing this ability called Rive, where she rips chunks of the tower apart and throws them across the room, which you have to dodge, these large chunks of debris. And she's also doing the swirlies that you have to get out of. So you have to like dodge these swirlies, and you have this Rive thing that's going on where you're dodging the beam, and you're trying to AoE down arrows while people are running away from the arrows while they're trying to dodge things. But there's nothing to damage other than the arrows, right? There's no Sylvanas boss. So everyone should be just targeting and killing arrows very quickly, is what should be happening. Something to keep in mind is that she does this Banshee's Wail as she sort of transitions into the next phase, which just does a ton of damage to people. So you sort of have this limited time inside the intermission where you're killing all the arrows as fast as possible before she teleports to the middle of the room and just does this big AoE in the middle of the room, and everyone gets their own little personal circle, and everyone has to spread out from each other. So what I would say is, if you are someone who has 3-minute cooldowns, use your 3-minute cooldowns on pull, and then save them for this intermission, because there's going to be so many arrows to kill that you just want to kill as many of them as fast as possible. So just use all your cooldowns inside this phase. You'll have them up again during the intermission. During the stage 2. I keep calling it the intermission. During stage 2, to use on one of the burn phases on Sylvanas. But you want to be sure these arrows die as fast as possible, because it's really the only thing that complicates this phase. Otherwise, you're just sort of standing around waiting for her to transition you into stage 2.
Yeah, I mean, the intermission is very punishing. It's simple, right? Because you have these lines, and then a ton of damage comes shooting down this line a little bit later, and then you just slide over and keep going. But man, those things move, so it can be kind of tricky, because there's a lot of spread mechanics going on while you have to dodge these particular lines, and there's no margin for error. So it's not difficult, really, because it's all things that as raiders we know how to do. Like, don't stand in bad is basically what the whole intermission is. But it's the way stuff overlaps, and like how fast that these hunks of Torghast come flying at you. It looks really cool. Like, I can't remember them ever doing anything like this in a raid where the boss is like literally deforming the room that you're playing in and using it as a weapon against you. Like, it's really cool, except the only way you're really paying attention to what it looks like is if you're dead, because you don't have time. You're too busy trying not to stand in whales or not stand in the Rive lines or whatever. So it is pretty hectic, and yeah, she's taking basically no damage. So you really shouldn't even be pushing your spells. Like, it's not going to do you any good. Just focus on staying alive however you can in the intermission, and wait for stage 2 to start.
Yeah. When we hit stage 2, basically Sylvanas jumps off of the Torghast Tower and starts running up the chains towards Oribos, and pursuing the jailer. Jailer's trying to get to Oribos, and so you pursue her on the chains, and you have Thrall and Jaina, and they're making bridges for you from chain to there's two chains, and you're sort of working your way back and forth between them. And they're making bridges between them, and there's a few abilities that you sort of have to pay attention to from Sylvanas. First of all is Ruin, This is a sort of large area of effect dark circle that she will cast, and this will happen when you are on the same platform as her. So you start off not on a platform with her, you'll cross a bridge to get to her, and as you cross the bridge, she'll do Haunting Wave, which is sort of these dodgeable shadow discs that she shoots out of herself that sort of spread out in a pattern, and you just dodge your way through them across the bridge to the platform. Once you get to that platform, she sort of is continuing to sort of teleport around doing Haunting Wave. You just keep dodging them as we go. And then you'll get another bridge, and then you'll have a platform where you interrupt Sylvanas. She'll be doing a cast that you 110% want to interrupt, because otherwise she just wipes your group. So just interrupt her, the first person across who can. And you start DPSing Sylvanas. And you're DPSing her for a little bit, sort of like a mini burn phase. And then she'll do this Ruin ability, where basically a bunch of dark circles will appear. You all move out of the dark circles, and she'll go to back over to the other side of the chains, and you will get your first sort of ad phase is what you're going to get. You'll have a bridge that crosses you back over. You will do a big stack of ads that you're fighting over there. Now, the ads that you're fighting, there's just Mossworn Vanguards, which aren't super crazy or powerful in any way. They basically increase their damage done by 50% through magic, and they have a movement speed increase, and their health is higher, and they have this ability that sort of stacks up with a Cursed Might. So if you can interrupt a Cursed Might or stun them or whatever, feel free to do that. However, the ones you really want to worry about are your Soul Judges and your Goliaths. These are the things that really hurt. Soul Judges do Crushing Dread, where basically it erupts with shadow damage to players within 5 yards of them every 2 seconds for 9 seconds. And this effect stacks every period and increases the damage of it by 10%. And basically, if you remove this, the effect transfers to another player until the Soul Judge is defeated. So it just literally puts debuffs on people that make them explode to people around them. And if you remove it, it spreads. So you just want to kill the Soul Judge as fast as you possibly can. They are one of your key targets. The Goliath does Fury, where it will have increasing damage from its melee attacks and increasing attack speed. Basically, it just enrages, and every time it attacks, it just keeps stacking this enrage higher and higher. You cannot dispel it off of the mob. So you just want to kill this mob as fast as you possibly can as well, because if you leave it alive too long, it's just going to stack its damage up so high it's one-shotting tanks. And that's really what we're looking out for here, are the Soul Judges and the Goliaths. There's also Summoners and Hope Breakers. The Summoners summon ads. I mean, go figure, they're Summoners. And you want to DPS them down. And then the Hope Breakers have a destabilize ability where they reduce people's movement speed and inflict shadow damage to those people and reduce their healing equal to 10% of their total health. And that'll stack up. So you don't want to leave the Hope Breakers alive for too long, because they will reduce people's health total and make it a little bit harder to move around. But they aren't sort of your key targets that are going to one-shot your tanks, and that's kind of what you want to worry about, is get those the Soul Judges and the Goliaths down. And basically the entire phase is what I just repeated up to this point with these same ads repeated. You just do that like 3 times, and then you go into phase 3 is what ends up happening in this encounter. We're going to stage 3.
Yeah, on like normal mode, this phase is just complete filler. Like, none of these ads have their really bad thing that makes them dangerous. Summoners you got to kind of pay attention to, because the orbs do stink if you let them blow up. Yeah. But other than that, really the hardest part of this phase, I think, is navigating the bridges. The bridges are kind of random configurations. They can have gaps in them that you don't expect. Make sure you have like somebody who can nail those interrupts, near the front of the group, so they can quickly get across the bridge. Outlaw rogues are good for this. Warriors, paladins with Avenger's Shield, because that cast will just straight up kill you. Other than that, like this is a very strange phase of the fight. It feels disconnected from the fight entirely to me. It's all about dodging stuff in a very confined space, and just kind of working your way through these ad spawns.
Yeah. All right, stage 3, you basically end up in the Arbiter's room upstairs in Oribos, and it's these 4 platforms. And on these platforms, you're fighting Sylvanas. Go figure. And this is sort of, if you remember way back to Cataclysm, there was a particular elemental raid where you could bounce from platform to platform as you sort of fought through this. This is a similar mechanic where there is the ability to walk to the edge of your platform and bounce from one platform to the next. And this will come in handy with a couple of abilities that are happening. Jason, do you want to start recapping the abilities in this phase of the fight?
Yeah. So now we're back fighting Sylvanas, and guess what? She does a lot of stuff that she was doing before. The Wailing Arrow is going to continue, except this time it's going to go on additional players, not just the tank. It starts on a tank, and it's going to hit, I think, 2 other players in sequence. You're on this little platform. You have nowhere to hit it on the platform, really, but you can use the platforms. The edges will shoot you off to the other side, like you were saying. So you can jump away, get hit with the Wailing Arrow, and then come back while the next Wailing Arrow is on the way out. You kind of want to spread out while you're on that platform. Everybody pick a side because one person's leaving as the next person's coming in. But it's the same idea. You just have to use the jumpy platforms. Veil of Darkness is going to continue. The same thing that looks kind of like Baby Defile. Some stuff returns. Shadow Dagger is also going to continue the exact same way it was. Then there's some stuff that is very similar, same idea, but has a different name, like Banshee's Heartseeker comes in. This is the tank combo to worry about. It's a little bit nastier than the combo in phase 1, but the same idea applies. She's also going to do another wail attack. It's called Banshee Scream instead of Banshee Wail. Same idea, the 4-yard circles, it's silence. Those are all the things that she does that will be familiar from earlier in the fight. The new stuff is all around Banshee's Bane and Raise.
Yeah, so Banshee's Bane is basically she puts a debuff on a player, and when this debuff stacks up, and when this player is dispelled, for each stack that this player has, they drop a pool on the ground, and this pool is like a shadowy dark pool. And if someone else walks over it, they pick the pool back up and will then have the debuff on them, and they can pick them all up. So the concept of this is when she casts Raise, she destroys one of these platforms that you're standing on, all right? And that platform loses its ability for people to leave that platform. So even if you survived through her ginormous Raise, ridiculous damage, you're now stuck, and you're just going to die on that platform. Because when she raises a platform, she also covers it in a sort of a death aura that's there. So you just don't want to stand in it. So what you're wanting to do is gather up all your Banshee's Banes. Typically you have a tank do this, run around, whoever's not tanking the boss, pick up all of these puddles on the ground, move to a corner of the platform that is assigned where no one else is standing, and have that player be dispelled. When they're dispelled, all of these puddles explode off of them and will take up a fair amount of space, but there'll be like a 1 or 2 second sort of grace period for people to get out of them if they weren't paying attention and happened to be standing in one before they pick it up. So you essentially leave all of these puddles on a platform that's going to get destroyed, while everyone travels to the new platform during Raise and is able to then start off with fresh debuffs on that platform. So just keeping that in mind and recapping that, people will get Banshee's Bane debuffs. You're going to drop a pool for every stack you have. You want someone to gather all the stacks and drop them in a corner where no one's standing. You want to leave all of them on that platform before moving to a new platform. And when she casts Raise, she destroys the previous platform you're on. It's a DPS race. There's only 4 platforms. You have to kill the boss, which is 50% on normal and heroic. And I assume LFR as well. You have to get her to 50% before she destroys the last platform. That's the race. That's the whole thing.
Yep, this is just your good old kill or be killed. Pop all your big stuff, pop your time warp, and kill the boss before you run out of space. It's punishing, but it's simple. I think the idea with using the platforms and using the Banshee's Bane stacks and having people be able to pick them up and drop them is cool. It's pretty interactive in a way. It's a cool use of the space. It doesn't work technically well 100% of the time, which is that's the unfortunate part. But I feel like on normal mode, this is a very approachable end boss compared to the last 4 or 5 we've seen. The Sylvanas fight is good. I mean, it's weirdly padded with the bridge section, but overall, I think it's a fine last boss fight for normal mode raiders. And I don't have much of an opinion about the heroic fight so far, but I'm not really dreading it at the moment, unlike some other fights we've seen of late.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's this is probably the last boss we're gonna have to talk about for quite some time. So have fun with it. Hopefully this chat helps you know what to expect if you are heading in there into LFR for the first time this week or something. A really cool fight visually for sure. The arenas are cool. The animations and spell effects are really cool. It's just it can be a little tricky when at the end when you're managing the the ever decreasing available space.
Yeah, and the only things I want to mention about this encounter is that the mythic fight is incredibly difficult from a lag perspective. There's consistent lag on this fight that happens, and if you're trying to dodge things in phase 1 and they aren't where you think they are, or they don't explode when you expect them to because things are delayed and just not happening or not syncing up properly, people's computers will lock for several seconds during this. Like on pull, you'll probably have 3 or 4 seconds of not being able to do anything in this encounter. So there's a lot of technical issues with this fight. So don't be surprised if you have players on your team who are suffering from these problems, because they're very common for this encounter. And it's probably one of the saddest things about this encounter is it's a very long encounter that has a lot of technical issues that are still plaguing it. So that's unfortunate that this is what this encounter is. But yeah, that is the final fight of the tier. That intermission phase is actually faster on Mythic. That stage 2 is actually faster on Mythic than it is on any other difficulty, because you get 2 bridges. Thrall and Jaina do the smart thing and they go different directions and make bridges on both sides, and you kill everything twice as fast. So I don't know. So I don't know why they didn't do that on the other difficulties, but they did.
Yeah, we could handle it, especially on like normal mode at least. Jeez, the ads really don't do much on normal mode. They're just kind of there. You fight them, they die.
Yeah.
You don't have to really worry about what does each individual ad do, because they don't do anything that's particularly dangerous, and you'll just chunk through them.
Yeah. All right, with that, we're going to play a quick sounder for our patrons, and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm going to give a special shout out to A Cookie, Arajian, Bubdoos, Bob, Celian, Claiborne, Deacon, Jeff, Caleb, Kapowie, Matt, Nibble the Mighty, Shorel, Trestle, Trey, and Xerxes. Thank you. This sounder is for you. That's right. We have a Patreon over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. And if you want to join that, we would always appreciate it. We love all of our patrons, including our newest one, Skeleton Etiquette. I love this. Great name.
Welcome, Skeleton Etiquette. I have a feeling it's not your birth name, but welcome anyway.
I mean, if it is, that's great. I mean, you had cool parents.
Your parents were out there, yeah.
So welcome. We appreciate all our patrons. They help us sort of host this show. And as I sort of mentioned previously, we've transitioned away from Spazbot stuff. So we are now on twitch.tv/the Starting Zone, not Spazbot Studios anymore. And we're getting a Starting Zone YouTube and a Starting Zone everything is what we're sort of piecing together. So we talked about that on a previous episode if you're curious about what's going on there, but there's no harm, just Spazbot's retiring for now. So we are focused on TSZing everything. So if you want to head over to the twitch.tv/the Starting Zone and give us a follow, we'd appreciate it. We do have our patron Q&A, which will happen on that channel, which is why I mentioned this here during the patron part, is we are going to do our patron Q&A/call-in show for August this coming Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. And so that is the 28th of August. And we will have it over at twitch.tv/the Starting Zone. If you are someone who wants to get your questions in, feel free to do that in our Discord or over on our Patreon. You can submit them there too, and we will answer your questions live on the show. And if you want to join us live and actually come on this show and talk to us and ask your question there, you can join the Starting Zone's waiting room channel that we have in our Discord, and you'll be able to pop in there. All right. We do not... I mean, we have... Okay, so we were trying to come up with a great question for you guys, and it's kind of tricky to do, but we're going to go along the lines of, with the news starting to come out about 9.1.5, right? What's the thing that you hope they throw in there? All right, we had, some new cosmetics come out. Maybe you're like, you know what? I really want a hippo travel form like Spencer does. I think that's a great idea. Let's go with that. You could choose to put that in, but we want to know what you guys would add into 9.1.5 if you could. I think that's a pretty good call for our question for this month. And of course, you guys can bring your own questions for us. If you've enjoyed listening... Oh, sorry, Jason, did you want to say something in that?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. Perfect. Thank you, patrons. And yeah, I don't think we're going to know a whole lot more about 9.1.5 than we know right now by the time we record on Saturday. So it's an open book. It's very exciting. It can be whatever we want it to be still. So let's talk about it.
Cool. If you have enjoyed this episode of The Starting Zone, consider heading on over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. They really help out our show. And we do have one here, but we're going to read it on next week's show. So just keep that in mind. But we will definitely get to yours next because we only have the one right now. So if you want to submit one, we'll get them in and we'll have time to chat about it. That's going to wrap up episode 472 of The Starting Zone. You can check out the show notes for this episode over at thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. You can leave your feedback or ask a question at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter at The Starting Zone. And if you want to get some TSZ gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/The Starting Zone. You can check out all the sweet designs we have on shirts and mugs and stickers and masks and all sort of that fun stuff. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
The best place to find me is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald, always talking whatever I'm doing in and around World of Warcraft and other stuff. So come say hello.
Great. And if you're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey or over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening and jobs done.